Genesis, chapter 10, verse 1 to 32. Genesis 10, 1. This is the account of the families of Shem, Ham, and Japheth, the three sons of Noah. Many children were born to them after the great flood. Descendants of Japheth. Genesis 10-2. The descendants of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tiras. Genesis 10:3. The descendants of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphath, and Togarmah. Genesis 10:4. The descendants of Javan were Elishah, Tarshish, Kittim, and Rodanim. Genesis 10:5. Their descendants became the seafaring peoples that spread out to various lands, each identified by its own language, clan, and national identity. Descendants of Ham. Genesis 10:6. The descendants of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan. Genesis 10:7. The descendants of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabtah, Raamah, and Sabteca. The descendants of Raamah were Sheba and Dedan. Genesis 10:8. Cush was also the ancestor of Nimrod, who was the first heroic warrior on earth. Genesis 10:9. Since he was the greatest hunter in the world, his name became proverbial. People would say, "This man is like Nimrod, the greatest hunter in the world." Genesis 10:10. He built his kingdom in the land of Babylonia, with the cities of Babylon, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh. Genesis 10:11. From there he expanded his territory to Assyria, building the cities of Nineveh, Rehoboth-ir, Calah. Genesis 10:12. And Reason, the great city located between Nineveh and Calah. Genesis 10:13. Mizraim was the ancestor of the Ludites, Anamites, Lehabites, Naphtalites. Genesis 10:14. Pathrusites, Casluhites, and the Caphtorites, from whom the Philistines came. Genesis 10:15. Canaan's oldest son was Sidon, the ancestor of the Sidonians. Canaan was also the ancestor of the Hittites. Genesis 10:16. Jebusites, Amorites, Girgashites. Genesis 10:17. Hivites, Archites, Sinites. Genesis 10:18. Arvadites, Zemarites, and Hamathites. The Canaanite clans eventually spread out. Genesis 10:19. And the territory of Canaan extended from Sidon in the north to Gerar and Gaza in the south, and east as far as Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, and Zeboim, near Lasha. Genesis 10:20. These were the descendants of Ham, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. Descendants of Shem. Genesis 10:21. Sons were also born to Shem, the older brother of Japheth. Shem was the ancestor of all the descendants of Eber. Genesis 10:22. The descendants of Shem were Elam, Ashur, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. Genesis 10:23. The descendants of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gezer, and Mash. Genesis 10:24. Arphaxad was the father of Shelah, and Shelah was the father of Eber. Genesis 10:25. Eber had two sons. The first was named Peleg, which means division, for during his lifetime the people of the world were divided into different language groups. His brother's name was Joktan. Genesis 10:26. Joktan was the ancestor of Almadad, Sheleph, Hazarmaveth, Jerah. Genesis 10:27. Hadoram, Uzal, Diklah. Genesis 10:28. Obal, Abimael, Sheba. Genesis 10:29. Ophir, Havilah, and Jobab. All these were descendants of Joktan. Genesis 10:30. The territory they occupied extended from Meshech all the way to Sephir in the eastern mountains. Genesis 10:31. These were the descendants of Shem, identified by clan, language, territory, and national identity. Conclusion. Genesis 10:32. These are the clans that descended from Noah's sons, arranged by nation according to their lines of descent. All the nations of the earth descended from these clans after the great flood. To be continued. 4. Genesis, chapter 11. Don't forget to subscribe.